as Professor Chidananda Bhattacharya. In our university days, we address him as CV sir. So I would say I would like to uh, introduce our CBSI to our students as well as the scholars who have participated in this uh, lecture series. Today is the sixth lecture of our lecture series, and it has been organized by the English department of Lalgod Government Degree College. And uh, I would like to uh, say something about our respected CBSI and some information. Uh, Professor Chidananda Bhattacharya completed his MA in English from CU, and he stood first in first class. Uh, his doctoral research work was on George Meredith, who was a major Victorian English novelist. He served as a whole-time teacher at the Department of English, the Scottish Church College, from 1982 to 1984. He joined RBU, Rabindra Bharati University, as a whole-timer in November 1984. He became professor in March 2001. At present, he is the head of the English department, Rabindra Bharati University. He also served as the Dean of the Faculty of Arts in Rabindra Bharati University. He received the Olive Credit Senior Literary Prize for his article on Whitman. I would like to mention some of his published books, and um, they are Meredith's Problem Novels, which is published in 1995. Uh, some of his edited books, like Hemingway Sentimental Issue from Departmental Journal of Review, The Tagore Reader, The American Literary Pageant, New English Literatures from RBU. And he is a visiting fellow to different universities like NBU, Tripura University, Vidyasagar University, etc. He hosted as director to many UGC, international and state level seminars. He was honorary guest faculty in Department of English, Calcutta University from 1985 to 2004. In 2006 and 2007, he directed the English Language Learning Special Program, Rabindra Bharati University, meant for the overseas scholars from Japan's Soka University. In 2019, he visited Department of English, University of Liberal Arts, Dhaka, as a resource person. So there are other information uh, in my exercise book, but still I think it would be better if we move to our lecture series. And I would request our sir to today's topic, Ode to a Nightingale. It's negatively capable expedition on transcendence. So over to CB sir.
Right. Thank you very much. I am grateful. Let me, in the very first place, express my uh, gladness and gratitude to Lalgod Degree College, Government Degree College authorities, and the Department of English, my very dear ex-students, Rahul and Doipayan, and others that may have been there. It is a special privilege to be called upon to speak on an area which I love much but understand very little, uh, because I've been taken by fancy towards Keats, and fancy is but a deceiving elf. So that's how. The more I'm getting into the dark chamber of thought, I'm quoting Keats, the more am I really being engulfed in darkness. How little do I know? I was even today morning, I was consulting, some of the pundits and pedagogues on Keats, those who have been, and they have been crossing swords, and each one is out with his own typical unique squeak on Keats, which is like nightingales chirping, but producing different notes. The point is, uh, Keats's Melopeak, so sweet, so melopic, so Spencerian in its sweet sounding cataract of sounds, so wise and so deep and profound as Shakespeare's observations, so pure and chaste as Wordsworth's, you know, what should I say, the living, surfing, white kind of foams of purity in Wordsworth's poetry, so imaginatively resplendent as Coleridge's, so idealistically, in fact, more loaded than Shelley, as no, as the elder poet had wished for. This is Keats. Keats is a wonderful confluence of the best faculties ever garnered up in one person. We have almost, we have to believe in some cosmic creator, specially taking special care to raise such a poetic figure. As to why I chose such a, what should I say, this chimera-like or chimera-like title, Expedition to Transcendence. I didn't use the verb transcendence, D-A-N-C-E, but I took transcendence as a fixed kind of condition of existence with the verbal gerund effect in mind, because transcendence can also be verb. But I have tried to make things initially clear. I have tried to binarize the vision of the poem. I have tried to look upon the poem as a debate within, yes, good morning to everyone, as a debate going on within the mind of the poet monistically. Monism, the same as Bangla mon, or Sanskrit monos, which is Latin menos, and Greek menos, monos, meaning mind. So monism is a spiritualized approach towards absolute abstract things, usually spiritual transcendental things, and where you speculate less through reason but more through a mystical, heart-bound, intuition-bound approach. If you, Dwaipayan was speaking of the Platonic kind of elements definitely doing their rounds in Keats. Yes, it is true. Platon or Plato is very much there thanks to the German transcendentalist ideals who went back to Plato and rediscovered new things, newer things in Plato. Those who have had a little brush with philosophy will know better how, for example, some of the dialogue between reason and intuition was raging on as part of the Enlightenment journey, right? And that's why Kant, Immanuel Kant, that great German philosopher, who actually tried to reconcile the apparently contrarious claims of reason or intellect versus imagination, intuition, introspection, and spiritual speculatio or speculation. In Bengali, dhyan, no? সহজ কথায় ধ্যান. So monism, monistic is ধ্যানতন্ময় approach to higher things. Keats's journey is from the terrestrial, from the mundane, from the earthly to the super earthly, supra earthly. I don't say to the heavenly. There, I would make a subtle demarcation between Wordsworthian idea of heaven or the Christian idea of heaven or the theistical dispositions idea of behest or swarga or heaven in manifestly religious spiritual disciplines, and in the imaginatively nuanced, done afresh, imaginatively reconstructed idea with the ideology behind it of aestheticism at work behind it by John Keats. The mature John Keats takes 6 to 7 years. The 5 years of his poetry writing are the end part. He was definitely preparing for it. He was tit-upping to become a poet. So if we don't have to get into his salad days when he was as a novice writing and sketching some of the writings. But he was thinking. Keats was habitually a thinker who mistook himself to be a drinker. He said, "Ha, I believe in enjoying the good things in life." In saying this, he was philosophizing. He didn't know. He seriously was casting about, মানে খুঁজে বেড়াচ্ছিলেন, he was casting about for an opening to extreme joy, extreme beauty, extreme appreciation of beauty and joy, which is definitely a commonality. This is a personal disposition found to be present in us universally. Who doesn't want to be happy? Everybody wants to be happy. Nobody wants to be unhappy, isn't it? Keats began as a person. He said, "I will be hopping from flower to flower and sipping at honey. That is the only job that a man is born for." This is an aesthetic attitude, to live for the sake of pleasure. So Keats was a pleasure seeker, a pagan. Constitutionally, psychopathologically, he was given to Ananda and Saundarya. Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram will come to him step by step. I'm speaking for the students. Nobody understands life and all its philosophical or transcendental underpinnings at the beginning of his life. Our life begins totteringly as a doddering child. We go for chocolates, we go for toys. It also begins like that. Good apple, beautiful looking women, large size grapes, and big flowers, acute smell. He likes them. And this liking clings to him because it wells up from within. It remains with him as part of his essential self. He doesn't know. He will be called upon by life's experiences to transcend it. To make my talk simple, I give you the end product at the beginning. জড়তা হতে অক্ষয় ধনে, সংশয় হতে সত্য সদনে, আমার ক্ষুদ্র সত্তা হতে বিশ্ব সত্তা, আমা হতে নাথ তোমাতে মোরে নূতন জনম দাহে. To have this new birth, you have to transcend your small territory of me, mine, and I. This small I has to be transcended. You have to arrive into the big I, which is we. Now, this doesn't come to the poet overnight. There have been alternative ways. Keats was looking around and he was dissatisfied. Religion was telling him all these life's things are lies, illusions. Just as in our Indian philosophies, one ledge of our philosophy tells us, Shob Maya, Shob Maya. मेहराली सब झूठ है, तफत जाओ. Christianity also teaches the same. Plotinus in Neoplatonic philosophy teaches the same. Plotinus says there is unus or nous, N-O-U-S, nous, the cosmic oneness, the cosmic soul. That is unus. Unus, Sanskrit uno, meaning act. Uno shot, meaning one shot of shot. Right? So uno meaning short, but it originally means one. In Latin, it is unus. In Italian, una, uni, uno, you know, numero uno. So unus, the concept of one, is big. Now, how do we go from the concept of many to see things differently? Me, you, him, chair, table, river, all these are different. But to unify them into one single vision, you require monism. Nobody tells us this one. Religion says you have to shut your eye. Don't look on at the world. The world is made up of illusions. Maya, Maya, Maya. Christianity says all are illusions. There is sin. Saint Paul taught us about the sin. And afterwards, Saint Ignatius's big theories of the praeteratio and contrition, contritio, and Saint Maurice, Saint Benedict, and later on, oh my goodness, Calvin, the Calvinistic philosophy has said. Kids were utterly dissatisfied. Don't tell me life is bad, life is a temptation, and that if you have attended to life's claims, you are actually participating in Satanism. In Islam also, the same thing is spoken of. Do not lose yourself in earthly temptations. Think of Allah and think of securing His grace, His raham. In Hinduism also the same. Leave the world and think of the other world. Wordsworth committed this error, I should say error, as part of a debate, where Wordsworth says, yes, this world is a faded kind of trap. Here we are hostaged. We have come from heaven. He means the metaphysical heaven. We have come from heaven. We have to go back there. And that is our only effort. Through nature, we will be throughing nature. We will be transcending nature to go to that unus, that Platonic idea of one, which in a more religious kind of mantle becomes the Plotinus' theory, from which Christianity takes so much. So that religion always insists on asceticism. Sannyashi hoye jao, be a recluse. Do not steep yourself, immerse yourself in eating, drinking, being merry. Are the religions wrong? It cannot say altogether that religions are wrong. He only says, the religions are not telling me the entire thing. Yes, there is suffering in this world, which I don't like. I want world to be made up only of joy and beauty. That is aesthetic. What is aesthetikos in Greek? Aesthetikos or aesthetikos means to love the principle of beauty, to look around for beauty, to study and appreciate beauty, that which appeals to our sense of, that's beautiful, that's pleasant. So study of pleasure and beauty is aesthetikos. Science moves through reason. Science moves through logic. By using science, we can break things into their parts. Wordsworth was definitely laughing with irony, and he said with disgust, oh, we murder to dissect. If we inspect into a flower how it is made up of petals, stem, for example, and what is it? The spora, the spores, the pollens, etc. In trying to look at those many things, we miss the total sight of the flowerness of the flower or the floweriness of the flower. Keats was becoming unhappy. He tried to, clasp around the beauties and joys of life. But the beauties and joys of life have two great drawbacks. He soon found out, the young Keats, the teenager Keats, he found that the beauties and the joys of life are imperfect in two ways. They finish off too early, they do not stay for long, and they are not plenary. তাদের মধ্যে পূর্ণতার পরশ নেই. They do not offer you full. For example, if you take 1 cup of juice, apple juice, there can be a bitter apple juice. If you eat an apple, there can be a more luscious, more red, more large, more delicious delicacy. There's no end to it. So physically, I mean, space-wise, adjective to space is spatial. Spatially, we are limited. And temporally, we cannot go on enjoying joy forever. We soon tire out. And the very thing that which gives us joy, if you get over much of it, it will cloy. Joy will turn into pain, will create your unhappiness. You love to get tickled. If I go on tickling you for 24 hours, it will be more than death, punishment. You will say, let me die, rather than, go on accepting it. So that's how the irony of life, that the ironic trajectory of life cast its kind of, it hit on Keats' head. And Keats was very unhappy. And he found that religions don't give me the answer to it. Religions intimidate us. They make us unnerved. They say, hey, Keats, by eating apple, you are actually frittering away your time. By looking at the beauties of the world, you are using up your time. You are frittering away your energy. You are not, banking up your soul's energy in some permanent account. You are using your recurrent account and you will be draining away. Soon you will have to die. This memento mori is the standard call of every religion. মৃত্যুকে মনে রেখো, তাই তো? ahani ahani bhutani gachanti yama mandiram shesha sthiramicchanti kimascharya matapparam. That was how Yudhishthira was replying to Yama. Everybody thinks, everybody sees how other people are dying every day. But people still seem to suffer from the illusion that perhaps I will live on. But that is wrong. And Keats unwillingly was compelled to think in such terms. In one of his letters, he tried to justify the suffering on earth. Because suffering is unbeautiful, apparently. Is there any justification in suffering? Aesthetic justification? Then suffering will also become beautiful. But religion says the world, the earth is a valley of suffering, a vale of tears, a vale of suffering, a vale of death. Which is why man should think of God, shut his eye and say, Mary, 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 Mother Mary, Mother Mary, Mother Mary, let me never be Mary, let me never be Mary, because Satan will take me away. Or, oh Christ, 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 save me. Oh God, 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 save me. And it says, out, this is very boring. This is not lovely. There are so many things awaiting. There is wine, there is flower, there is apple, there are sweet girls, there is a rainbow in the cloud, and still I must shut myself up in a corner and say, Christ, 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 save me, save me. This is not aesthetically the correct word. I am referring to the general journey of Keats, in which I will try to situate Ode to a Nightingale, because Ode to a Nightingale is the climax. In this journey of Keats, where is that mukti? Where is that liberation? And Keats calls it salvation. This transcendence He calls it salvation because Keats is instituting a religion all by himself. What is the religion? The religion of beauty and joy. Keats supplants, substitutes the name of God. Keats is not an atheist. This is a popular mistake. Keats is not an atheist. Keats believes in Christ. In his letters and in his biographical documents, Keats was, absolutely respectful of Christ. He had no quarrel with spiritualism. He had every quarrel with the agenda or agendum that religion was forking out. The standardized esoteric সকলের জন্যে esoteric formula that religion was trying to sell. Come, renounce everything of the earth and shut your eyes and think of God. Keats says no. God is there, but God must be beautiful. God must be an idea, Plato, beauty and joy and truth. This is the mature Keats who will find it out. How does he find out? He starts writing poetry and questing for transcendent. In his Endymion, he looks to the moon and he idealizes. The world is like the moon, and the poet is Endymion, the lover of the moon. Already the quest has started. Is there immortality possible? Can man gain immortality? Oh, why should death be there? Death is such, he is not covered. He is not covered. He is not afraid of dying physically. He is aesthetically disturbed that such a man, such a powerful man, intellect, imagination, possibility, such a great lover, such a great connoisseur of lovely things, suddenly he will have to die like an insect, like a beetle. Why this? Why does our creation not give us ample opportunity? Why doesn't it give us respect? We are men, but we die like, flies, fleas. Almost that those famous lines from King Lear, as flies to wanton boys are we to gods. They kill us for their sport. Isn't it? This answer has to be found. This is the birth of the thinking Keats. Sleep and poetry onwards, Keats is taken up with the thought, two great thoughts Pettit has already pointed out. What are those two great thoughts? Love and death. Love is Keats, loves the world, loves Fanny Brawny, loves everything. He opens his poetic eye on everything. Personally keen to, enjoy, but suddenly resisted by these two great jail wardens, time and space. Hello, Keats, get away. You will have to die. Sorry, your tenure is over. It is almost like Hamlet's father. Sorry, my dear child, I have to get back to hell. My tenure is over. Why this? So the third stage in Keats is Hyperion. He was recasting, revising. In Hyperion, he tried to, almost monistically, he tried to hypothesize that people will die. No matter how much might I wish, let there be no death, let there be only immortality, let there be only perfection, let there be only plenum, purnam. Sanskrit purnam, Latin plenum. So, R becoming L. So, not everybody is going to be immortal. The early Keats believed that man will become immortal by studying, looking on beauty, and having joy. Man is like a god. No, then nobody get there. Perhaps poets can. Perhaps world has left some window open through which man can get out, and the poets can perhaps go and see the face of the other world, perfection, heightened world. This is Mr. Kant knocking at the door of Keats. Kant, in his critique of pure reason, polemicized the idea of the ideal world's accessibility to us. আমরা মানুষেরা কি স্বর্গ পৌঁছতে পারি? স্বর্গ is a condition, a blessed, perfect condition, not in the sky, not up there in some remote part of the galaxy. No, it is a heightened, escalated, superior condition of existence, a godly condition of existence. What is godly condition of existence? Which kids wants but doesn't get? Perfection. Perfection in enjoyment, perfection in appreciation of beauty, perfection in ontological existence. Ontology, study of being. We as men are imperfect. That great Hamlet question. Oh, but this too solid flesh will melt. Man, such a noble work. Man, such a great philosopher. Why does he have to suddenly fall victim to time and death, so that all our great work will grow back to seed? That was Hamlet. He was definitely speaking of this in Act 1, Scene 2, and in this too solid flesh, perhaps in Act 3. Hamlet is impersonating as John Keats in Ode to a Nightingale, because here Keats is putting to test his imaginative monistical hypothesis that perhaps poets are superior men, heroes. Read Lionel Trilling's, the poet hero essay. Lionel Trilling was also referring to this. So naturally, the poet hero perhaps can burn his way through the world. I'm quoting from King Lear. You have to use your experience as school. Yes. Then the world of suffering, the valley of tears, the valley of death will be repurposed, utilized by an extra meritorious student called the poet. A student, an average student will die, but a poet is an extraordinaire student, extraordinaire, who will study with anashakti, non-attachment, but full of love. He will do it for the sake of others. He will not do it as a hungry glutton. আমি খুশি হব, আমি সুখী হব, হ্যাঁ অল্পেতে খুশি হবে দামোদর শেটকি, মুরকির মোয়া চাই, চাই ভাজা ভেটকি. But that is after all a personal, hankering, not out of personal hankering, out of a philosophically sincere quest for আছে কি কোনো মুক্তির পথ? Is there any way out there? জড়তা হতে অক্ষয় ধনে, can we not get a passage? Can we not purchase a ticket which will take us through a thoroughfare from the world of suffering into the world of no suffering, so that we can use our knowledge of suffering as our ticket? That is why in Nightingale, in the third stanza, the suffering imagery are so concentratedly given. Okay. Anyway, now imagination, monistical act, perhaps can do that. In Hyperion he tried and failed. For the last time in the Odes, he tries to use them. In Ode to Psyche, he clearly says, Ore, amar mon pare, my psyche can take me there. How can my psyche take me there? By seeping my heart in the sorrows of others. By knowing that man is after all a limited person, a limited being, mortality. So that's why sunt lacrimae rerum, that great Virgilian idea of death, the great Virgilian idea of mortality and limitedness. Lacrimae, M-A-E, lacrimae rerum, the world is full of tears. I quote from Matthew Arnold, there's a sense of tears in everything. Keats knows that only he can go to joy, only he can speak on joy, one who has known of tears. That shallow poet who is only honeymooning with joy, he is not our teacher to be. He cannot tell us fully what supreme joy is. He can tell us, the poet hero, one who has lived through, one who has gone, crossed the Rubicon, gone through that, fire girdle, crossed all the sufferings and woes, known them, taken upon himself, and then put them face to face, joy and suffering. He, carefully weighs them in both hands with a kind of philosophical commitment, which is negative capability. What is negative capability? To rise above your personal, self-bound, selfish disposition. To be able to reach a great joy, to be able to reach a great sense of beauty. And what does Keats say? The sense of beauty, for me, to me, the sense of beauty overcomes, every other consideration. In fact, it obliterates all other considerations. You are so taken, meditatively taken, with studying the nature of beauty, that you are not looking for beauty for your own personal sake. You are a teacher, you are a vicar, a Christian padre or a father, Catholic father, a vicar who is a padre. Padre is a Spanish Portuguese word meaning father. He suffers all these intellectual and spiritual and morbid imaginative sufferings for the sake of his children, the others in this world. That is a church father-like business. A poet is a friend, philosopher and guide. Here Keats is very much like Wordsworth, a disciple of Wordsworth. What did Immanuel Kant say? Immanuel Kant said, no matter how much we may try, we are born to this mortal world. The immortal world, made up of ideas, made up of spirituality, which is above the ceiling. We are in a room, as it were, this world. If we go up, 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 we can go up to the ceiling and hit our head against the ceiling. Therefore, we are very close to the ideal world, but we cannot break the ceiling, shoot beyond the ceiling, and get into the ideal. Keats says, can we not? There is an amorous lover's quarrel. Keats has been specially influenced by Coleridge. Keats has been specially influenced by Wordsworth, but his route is different because he has been specially influenced by Novalis. Novalis is Georg Friedrich Freire, Georg Philipp Friedrich or Friedrich Freire, Hardenberg. That's his big enough name, but his pseudonym, poetic name is Novalis, a real great poet who was 22 years senior, 23 years senior, absolutely Coleridge's and Wordsworth's age to Keats. He was a mystic poet, a monistical poet who first actually foregrounded the idea of creative imagination. And although he did not use the phrase negative capability, he was actually peddling the idea of the selfless search undertaken by the poet for the salvaging of the world. So I think advanced students will remember that Novalis, one of those post-Kantian idealists, who tried to look at the possibility of, can we get beyond the Kantian no? Kant says you can't. And Keats says, why can't we, Mr. Kant? Through poetry we can, perhaps. Let me see. Novalis also tried that. Novalis tried and came back with melancholy. He said, yes, we tried through poetry, we tried through religion, because Novalis was very theistical, he is philosophical. He has a great similarity in his life situation with Keats. His beloved died, Sophie, 1798. Novalis himself died 1801. Yes, aged 28. Keats died almost 26. Novalis died 28. And with the death of his beloved, Novalis was broken, absolutely full of melancholy. So there are great similarities between the two. And very, very aesthetic expressions of poetry. Anyway, Nightingale is a symbol which picks up mainly from Coleridge. You know, in April 1819, he was walking with Coleridge and he was asking, questions about poetry, and Coleridge was answering to him. So Coleridge is like a guru to John Keats. And Coleridge wrote two poems on Nightingale. So that the Nightingale idea has been used by, Novalis also. Nightingale has been used by Shakespeare. In fact, who not? Wordsworth also refers to Nightingale once. Nightingale in Greek Philomela is actually perhaps synoptically, metonymically used for the Plotinine kind of idea of the onus. That's why it was thinking of the Nightingale maybe because Nightingale has a Greek connection. Philomela, the feminine for Philomel, she was sitting at the rafter in Odyssey, for example, when wife of Ulysses or Odysseus was Penelope was sitting on weeping, waiting for her husband. Then the bird came and consoled her. There is a tortuous oblique reference to it in one of those stanzas, penultimate stanza in Keats's Nightingale. Now, I will take some extra minutes. I have already told Dwaipayan because Nightingale cannot be spoken of in just half an hour, under an hour. But I am trying to give you the project of Keats, what he is trying to do. In Psyche, he says imagination, those winged words. Do you know why he uses Psyche? Psyche is Plotinus or Plotinus, the monistical idea. Psyche is semi-religious. Keats is actually very religious, not in the pratisthanic, formal sense. Keats is highly religious because he supplants God, but he keeps godliness by love, beauty, truth, and joy. All these things are his kind of destination. He will go to them, very much like what WBS's romantic call. I will sail down to those islands, those isles, Lake Isles, or for example, T.S. Eliot's call to the ideal world through the wasteland, through purgation. In Nightingale also, we find that Keats is, this is I am indebted to my own PhD supervisor, Professor Professor Vishwanath Chattopadhyay, and I'm also indebted to my sir, Professor Bhabatosh Chatterjee, who used to teach us Keats in Kolkata University, and also indebted to my own father, who loved to wised me up on Keats years through. Anyway, if I picked up anything, it is because of them. Bhabatosh Babu, my father, and Vishwanath Babu. Vishwanath Babu has referred to the triadic structure in the Ode to a Nightingale. What is that? He has quoted that famous chapterization of Carlyle in Sartor Resartus. What is that? The Virgilian triad: Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. Inferno, hell; purgatory, where you are becoming Shuddha, you are becoming purified, and then paradise. The Song of the Nightingale creates the condition, and Keats goes through suffering in the hospital imagery of the third stanza, where palsy shakes a few sad last grey hairs, the weariness, the fever, and the fret. They are almost from Hamlet. The weariness. They are also, you can rhyme them with Tennyson picked it up. I'm a weary, isn't it? And definitely, weariness is very much there in Hamlet. I'm weary. So Keats is always thematically thinking of the Hamlet situation. Why don't we pass beyond? Inferno has to be crossed because the poet has to be, you know, the right kind of guide for everybody. The poet, as long as he is positively incapable, what is positive? If in electricity, if you touch by that screw light driver, the light sparks up. Oh, that's positive. There is current, there is electricity. As long as you have self within you, you are positive. So you are incapable of going to the world of spirit because you are too matterly, you are too mundane. You have to take to imagination. When are we too mundane? When we let ourselves be dictated by only logic. So Keats is actually quarreling with the classical, neoclassical logos. The Enlightenment, one part of Enlightenment is logic, science, and logic chopping and prose. No, no, no. You can't go to the ideal world with only the right part of the brain saying logic, 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 reasoning. Then you have to also depend upon the left part of the left ventricle is imagination. Man's mind has two things, logic and imagination. But both have to be relied upon. It doesn't say you switch off your logic completely. You keep logic in animated suspension or suspended animation. No, animated suspension. Logic is vestigially there. But দেখি না, দেখি তো এরকম হয় কিনা, that mind has to be open. So, what is negative capability? You all know the definition. By negative capability, I mean, says Keats, I'm not very good at memorizing. I'm giving you almost the look of it. Negative capability is that condition of the ability to remain in the midst of, in a state of doubts, mysteries, uncertainties, mystery, and doubt, in which the irritable reaching after reason and fact is suspended. So, this is the great cognizance of man's inventive power. If you want to invent something, if you want to get ahead inductively, Keats is actually talking of the inductive process, not deductive. I will work only on found, proven facts. Sorry, there are certain fuzzy and fudgy elements where the proofs have not yet taken place. You have to speculate. How can you speculate? You have to speculate by activating your imagination. What is imagination? The ability to form mental images, monistical. And what is poetic imagination? Poetic imagination is when you are guided by your love for all. That is sweet, that is aesthetic. শুধু নিজেকে ভালোবাসা, unbeautiful. Love everybody, philosophically, that's beautiful. The second stanza shows Keats when he gets wine and when Flora comes in, he doesn't say, let us go into a room and you, my dear, beautiful, sweet lady, you and I shall enjoy it together. No, he says, let us come out into the open field. Chalo, সবাই মিলে আনন্দ করি. Sarve sukhina santu, sarve santu niramaya. Isn't it? Let us dance and chant and dance together. Let us have a wine together. Let us distribute wine to all of us. That is the greatness of heart, which theme is repeated in Rishonan, first stanza. What men or gods are these? What maidens look, etc., etc. That is the truth. And that truth is beautiful. So Grishanan is an extension of the findings which Keats tortures himself to find out in Nightingale. So Nightingale has three phases. Let us see. I want to get away to the ideal world. He says, fade far away from the sufferings of the world, from the limitedness of the world. Oh, but how can I live? There are so many people. I cannot leave only myself. আমি একা যাব না, তোমাকেও সঙ্গে নিয়ে যাব. When the Bengali poet writes this, he is actually copying it from John Keats. When he has learned the lesson from John Keats. Don't, if you want to be happy, don't try to be happy only yourself. Make everybody happy. Then your happiness becomes intenser, almost infinitized. A man physically cannot be infinitely happy, but a man mentally, imaginatively can be infinitely happy if he is philosophically guided by this correct aestheticism. That is the correct way, pathology. আপনারে লয়ে বিব্রত রহিতে আসে নাই কেহ অবনি পরে, সকলের তরে সকলে আমরা, প্রত্যেকে আমরা পরের তরে. Dance and provincial song and sunburn man. And how can you arrive into this realization? By suffering for others. Look at the world, how it suffers. There is a hospital. People are all patients. There is no doctor. Everybody is crying, weeping. Are you my doctor? Can you save me? Then the patient says, no, I am not doctor. I am also looking for doctor. What are you suffering from? I am suffering from palsy. What are you suffering from? I am suffering from fever. What are you suffering from? I am suffering from loss of hair. My hands are gone. That's the crux. Inferno. And that inferno is suffered on by the poet. The poet says, I must journey. I must discover a passage out of this. I must discover something out of this. Can I go through logic? Logic says no. You will die. You are made up of flesh and blood. You are bones, and you will soon turn into goblins. Youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies, where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden eyes. Can there be a purgatory? Yes. By poetic imagination, I will go to that ideal world. Kant has said you cannot. But Kant has also said, you can, my dear, you can come close to it. So there is negative capability. The state of dekhai jak na. Is there any way out? Why should I foreclose the door? Why should I, at the very beginning, say, no, 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 no. There can be no relief from suffering, death, and decadence. Man can perhaps aggregate, congregate all his, not just intellectual, imaginative might, poetically, mystically, through the heart. My heart says, if I can feel my way home. I cannot reason it out. I cannot debate it out. But I can reach the truth by feeling. That German transcendentalist romantics, the Jena circle, Jena, the early romantics, for example, Schelling, Fichte, for example, Schlegel, for example, Novalis, for example, they all were actually selling this imagination, which Coleridge was already proposing to take on to the secondary imagination. Keats only leavened it up with heart. Secondary imagination, when it is, moist and moistened with heart, feeling, pathology, then it becomes the agent of change, so there is a political content also. World must learn how to live not through intellect. World, in order to reach a happy state, must be rechristened in a new baptism of love. Love others. Isn't it? Almost Vivekananda. Isn't it? নিঃস্বার্থ হয়ে সবাইকে ভালোবাসো। হ্যাঁ, যেজন আপনার জন্য, যেজন পরের জন্য আপনার জীবন উৎসর্গ করিয়া দিতে শিখে নাই, তাহার মানব জীবনে বৃথা। This great truth is the key, is the ticket. That is the purgatory. The queen moon is on her throne. I am there, I am there. Where am I? In a dark state, in a meditative state. Keats is dreaming. It is not thinking. It is a It is a spontaneous meditative act. Keats is also stealing from another Greco-Roman tradition, that is mystical tradition, the monastical tradition. What is that? Ciceronian idea of dream. Dream is a spiritual word in that Greco-Roman context. It is no dream has many stages. Cicero has given us many stages of dream. Macrobius has already explained. যেমন বইয়ে টিকা লেখা হয় সেরকম Cicero's idea of dream has been explained and explicated by Macrobius. And I have forgotten, I read of it years back. There are many stages. At the rudimentary physical level, আমরা যখন খাই দাই, আমাদের যখন গ্যাস হয়, when we suffer from flatulence, then we dream. We are actually physically sleeping, but then our eyes rove on and we have physical, hiccups and hewings, so that we also dream. That is called somnum animalum. The animal-like somnum, meaning dream. Then, at the next level, there is siesta, reverie. আমরা জেগে জেগে যখন ভাবি, almost we are thinking. Suddenly, we start making mental images. This is what Coleridge calls primary imagination, I feel. Then, it becomes deeper. Keats says, from the maiden chamber of thought into the dark chamber of thought. তোমার মনে যখন গহন চিন্তা দেখা দেয়, when you are যবে বসে আছি ভরা মনে, দিতে চাহি নিতে কেহ নাই, রাশি রাশি ভাড়া ভাড়া ধান কাটা হলো সারা. The poet is full of loads of wisdoms, lovingly garnered for his brothers and sisters. I am here. I am your, friend, philosopher, and guide. I am your alter ego. I am nobody as a poet. The poet has lost his own self. The poet is you. From me to you. That is the purgatorial journey. So, poetic imagination takes the poet to that state called, what is it? Contemplatio. Poetic imagination, already with thee, tender is the night. That is contemplatio. And contemplatio gets to be deeper in the dark chamber of thought. Keats বলেছেন না মনের চেম্বারের মধ্যে. Keats is getting deeper into the alleys. What is it? He feels how it feels to be in the perfect world. But the perfect world cannot be a tangible installment of reality. And it has been a mock-up. It is a simulacrum. এটাকে poetic imagination is creating a pseudo-paradise. Paradiso. So, Sartor Resartus has given us 3 chapters. What is it? The everlasting no, which answers to Dante's Commedia, Inferno, everlasting no, হবে না. You cannot go to the immortal world. Man, you are immortal, you are immortally subjected to mortality. Can it be? The second chapter is definitely Purgatorio, the suffering. And the third, I'm forgetting the name of the second chapter. The third chapter is the everlasting Yea. Y-E-A, that is E-S. This purgatory is a death thought, the thought of death. I know, even when I am negatively capable, I'm imagining. One part of my mind is saying, Keats, is it real? Are you really gone there? Can I really go back and tell my, brothers and sisters in the world that yes, as a poet, I have finally discovered a passage of exit from this world into the other world? He says other world is not heaven, metaphysical heaven. It is a perfect world. Wordsworth said, I will go away to heaven. Keats says, no, I will download heaven here. The heavenly existence in this world. See, the aesthetic justification. Keats loves this world. He never rejects this world. He only wants to correct the the desideratives, the shortfalls in this world. Apple is temporarily living. He wants the apple to forever exist forever. He wants the apple to be tasty, ideally. That's how it is. But he knows also that this is a terrible effort being put on by him through contemplation. So it is better to die. It is better to die is the kind of psychomachia, the soul's fight between the two, reason and imagination. Reason and imagination are, fighting. So that it says, oh, death is better far. If I could have died, at least death is the only way to become happy. As long as you live in this life, there will be unhappinesses, there will be trials. But there is a logical error in this. Because life is painful, is it right to die? Life is also joyful. Life has been like it. So, what do we do? What do I tell my, brothers and sisters, the brethren of the world, that I had tried to, talk the nightingale into confidence. Nightingale is the ideal of the ideal world. Nightingale? Is there no immortality assigned for us? Nightingale seems to suggest, that is poet himself, seems to suggest, yeah, no and yes. Physically man cannot be immortal, but a poet can become immortal. In Hyperion, the poet was trying to be physically immortal. He couldn't. Apollo was becoming immortal, but he couldn't engage completing the poem because he stopped believing in it. But here, Apollo becomes immortal like Nightingale. Keats will die, but poetry and poet and the poet's search for the ideal world will remain on. It will be carried over. In Ode to Autumn, this message has been given. Earth will remain on, new people will be coming on, so that life will be immortal, West will be immortal, তোমার আমার এই যে খেলা চিরকাল চলবে. So that's one way of immortality. Poet's message will remain. In the penultimate stanza, poet's message will remain. But there is an undertone of sorrow, isolation. Ruth is alone, deserted. The princess is sitting on alone and deserted. They are all, what is it? Metonymies or synecdoches for the human soul. The human soul knows that in my imagination, আমার সুরগুলি পায় চরণ, আমি পাই না তোমারে. This is the ironic double tone, this split existence. One part of human being is superhuman. It can think of, it can sense, it can smell the other world. Kant says you cannot go to the other world. The poet says, I can sense the other world, although I cannot go there. So that Kant is not disobeyed. Kant is justified. But the poet is also justified. The poet has risen to a revelation that is the highest state of dream. A revelation is an oracle, oraculum. The highest state of dream, Cicero says, oraculum. The nightingale's message, thou wast not born for death, no immortal birth, your immortal birth, no hungry generation did ever tread you down. The voice I hear this passing night was perhaps heard, by emperor and clown. Sing for everybody, sing for all. That is the revelation, that is the great message Keats arrives at. So that the battle is both lost and won. Keats is both Macbeth and Hamlet, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. Yes, we will have to die. Everything is, negative and futile. But no, everything is not negative and futile. It is not my life is fallen into the seer, the yellow leaf. No. It is not a fury signifying nothing. No. It is, what is it? Epia terontas, meaning winged words. The poet's words are the nightingale. The poets have winged words. Keats is borrowing it from Homer. Epia teronta is the words having wings. Pteronta, pterodactyl, pteronta is wings. Winged words. Epea is, cognate with epos, epic. So epea, pteronta is winged words. That's why Keats has settled on Nightingale. Nightingale came. Nightingale is a dream. Took the better of Keats, guided him to a point of revelation that you have to suffer for others. You have to, garner up all your might, think of others, use your experiences of life in a negatively capable way. You look upon experiences not from your personal vantage, selfish vantage, but look upon them as to whether they have any promise of beauty. What is that promise of beauty? Do they teach us anything? Yes, they teach us that আছে দুঃখ, আছে মৃত্যু, তবু আনন্দ. Life has, seamy sides, but you must not be, you know, aborted by them. You must think beyond them. And your awareness of pains and sufferings will motivate you to get beyond it. That's the negatively capable power in kids. That I know death is there, I know suffering is there, I know banality, vulgarity is there, but yet my mind says that there is something better, something beyond, something good. Let me try and see into them. So it is only when we become negatively capable, when we can switch off our capering, quarreling brain, logic, and when we can settle down to magic, when we sit down with our grandma, আজকে বসে তোমার কাছে গল্প শুনবো, we know that these are all fibs, confabulated stories, but we take the beauty of it. How sweetly grandma is telling all those sweet stories. So the appeal of the story find, the appeal of myth, the appeal of mythical imagination is actually a healing thing. It cannot directly give us a permanent cure, but it gives us a strength and fortitude, a knowledge, an adult awareness of the sweet lesson that the earth is not just a valley of suffering. The earth is a valley of soul making. Keats said this to his brothers. The earth is like a school. The earth is like a school. And Nightingale has schooled Mr. Keats. That is, Keats's own poetic self teaches us. Keats is a teacher who teaches us through the Nightingale poem that you have to take in your stride both joy and suffering, but you have to be neutral. Okay, that's why the vision, the visio, the oraculum has served its purpose very aesthetically correctly. The poem concludes there. Fled is that music. Okay, the music of the other world was on for a few moments, but it doesn't linger on forever here. That's how it is. Thank you. I have done.
Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful lecture. It was really a wonderful lecture. Now,
Thank you.
if anyone has any question, you can ask to sir. Any question on this particular poem? You can put it on the comment box, or you can directly ask by unmuting yourself. Today our capacity, our digital capacity was almost full, and we are really thankful to all the participants, and sometimes we could not accommodate all the participants due to the shortage of space, but we have kept the recording that will be shared with the participants if they are in need of that. I have one question to sir. That is, sir, in the beginning of the poem, Keats calls the song of the nightingale as a happy one, happy lot. This is how the first stanza begins. And in the last stanza, stanza 8, there he calls the song of the nightingale as a plaintive anthem. So there is a sea change from the happy music that he tells in the beginning, much like Coleridge in his poem on Nightingale. But towards the end of the poem, he calls the Song of the Nightingale as a plaintive or melancholic anthem. So why is there a change in terms of the nature of the song?
The Nightingale song, when it first started being active, it was working on the trouble tone, the depressed mind of, I haven't had the time to tell you, but you have already told your students, everybody knows, Keats was not faring well. Physically, he was already becoming duller and duller, and he was in Hampstead Garden, sojourning at his friend's house, Charles Armitage Brown's house. He was actually on way to becoming, tuberculotic already. So he was having real, in the physical sense, he was having, aches in his breast, in his chest. He was having chest pains, some uneasiness. Suddenly, this beautiful afternoon, the ambience and the chirping of the nightingale, the cooing of the nightingale, made him happy in spite of himself, made him feel joy. It was a shooting kind of sudden, pleasant surprise. So that subjective, Keats is a subjective poet. So his subjectivity is of supreme importance. It is not what the nightingale is, it is on how I look upon you. So at that moment, the nightingale's notes were happy because it was making Keats negatively capable. But when the music meaning the charmed spell, the nightingale created a charm spell. As long as you are in charm spell, it is happy. The moment the vision has faded, you are out into this dull world, then it becomes plaintive because, oh, Keats, sorry, man cannot permanently become denizens of the immortal world. With this sad realization, can the song of the nightingale sound happy? So it is absolutely in tandem with, in consonance with what is doing then in Keats's mind. If Keats is happy, that is pathetic fallacy. Meaning, when you are happy, then everything seems happy. When you are unhappy, everything wears an unhappy countenance, isn't it? So that's how it is. It shows with unerring psychological kind of power that it is having to do with your own modus of mind. Right. Yes, somebody was asking me about death and pain. Death
Yes.
and pain, death and pain are an inevitable part of reality. The problem is, Keats is teaching us in the poem that a romantic poet should not teach that you become happy only by avoiding death and pain, because death and pain will be there. If you are so brittle, you are so defenseless that you can be happy only when sitting in the mother's lap. The moment when your mother is not there, you are unhappy. Oh my goodness, then you will most of the time remain unhappy. So you have to have some mechanism in you to overcome the fear of death, the ugliness of death, the macabre, the unagreeable, disagreeable part. So death and pained Keats. Keats was a thinker. His primary purpose was to think how to ferret out a passage out of death and suffering, not for himself, but for the world. The world is addled up with so many worries. The world is muddled and muddied by these specters, spectral reality, death, deprivation, decadence, suffering, disease, all those, damn words beginning on these. So, death and pain must be the preoccupation of the greatest poets. Shakespeare was taken up with death and pain, and Keats is taken up with death and pain. Who is not? Everybody is. All great men, Baudelaire, death and pain, T.S. Eliot, death and pain. If you go to the greatest of, Homer, death and pain, Virgil, death and pain. You go to Dante, death and pain. So naturally, death and pain are not sublunary affairs. They are our. Keats has been thinking of them. For example, in the sonnets on death, the terror of death, for example. Why did I laugh tonight, for example? In Bright Star, for example. All great poets, Shelley, in stanzas written in Dejection near Naples, for example. Death is there. Coleridge is also, thinking of death in life, life in death in Ancient Marina. So it has to be there. Murder in the Cathedral is taken up with the idea of dying and death and martyrdom and all that.
Sir, I have a
Only when you have successfully held a dialogue with death can you tell others how to overcome death. So Keats studied death in his art for deathlessness.
sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Uh, Sir, usually I don't know, sir, whether it is logical or not. In order to reduce my shortcomings regarding the understanding of philosophy of transcendence, I am asking this question. So usually we use the philosophy of transcendence to understand its point. Is it possible that if we use philosophy of immanence to understand its point, because
What
uh,
what is immanence?
immanence is that the extension of supreme being, whereas in philosophy of transcendence, it is suggested that you cannot be one with God. There is always a gap between the mortal being and the supreme being.
I
That
would love to listen. I would love to listen to you. Why at all you would propose that Keats's idea can be successfully connected to the idea of immanence?
so
Why
because
did you think of it?
uh,
Why did it come to your mind?
so because uh, everywhere we find that he is trying to become something else, that somewhere he is not satisfied with his former self, and sometimes he is trying to become the nightingale when sometimes he
Look,
is.
Arvichada, look,
Yes, sir.
immanence and transcendence in the context of religion, theology. What you were saying is actually moved in the hermeneutical interpretation of theology. Keats is not absolutely riveted to the hieretics. Keats is playing as a Freemason. He is a freelancer. He is interested in transcendence, not in the transcendentalism of the theologians. He has a quarrel with them. But he is thinking of transcendence because he is mired in the quagmire of suffering.
Oh,
Is there any relief from pain? Is there any relief from this idea of imperfection, finiteness? Is there any passage from finiteness to infinity? From passage from imperfection to perfection? This is not whether God is everywhere or not. He is not taken up with the idea of whether God is everywhere or not. It will be very relevant if you ask this question in the case of William Blake. William Blake is immanentist that way. Huh? Because he doesn't believe in transcendentalism, that God is somewhere else. God is everywhere. Huh? But Keats doesn't decline his quest that way. Yes, Anumita, I don't get to see your point. Can you give me again? Can I see your question? Anumita was asking something, but the
Sir,
lines are disappearing. Yes.
Anumita has asked to highlight on the concept of God and religion.
God is actually a theological argument. Theology gives us a constricted hic in Latin. This much is the physiognomy of God. When you say God, you are inevitably rooting him or her back to a system and mode of belief. For example, if you are a Catholic God, then you are a God the Father. If you are a Protestant God, then you are God the Holy Ghost. If you are an Islamic God, then you are definitely God the abstract, formless. If you are a Vedantic God, you are a formless God, Veder God. If you are a Puranic God, then you are many gods, all going back to Vishnu or Shiva, the ultimate God. So that's how when you think of God, you are impersonating the cosmic principle. And even if you do not impersonate, you are thinking of a kind of theistical existence. Kids doesn't want to get entangled into this existentially very frequent question of if God is there or not. He is not interested in if God is there or not. He is interested in the question if the world sustains good, beauty, love, and joy or not. So he is qualitatively after the same question, only he has taken off these suits, the coats, and the pants. He is essentializing God into a condition, the condition of perfection. And this condition of perfection doesn't have to be named Christian, Islamic, or Zoroastrian, or Jewish, or Hindu. It is theistical in this sense. It is, what is it? ভুলে যাচ্ছি, আরে বাবা, aesthetical. Aesthetical is universal. Everybody can accept it. But if you are a Hindu, you will have problems accepting the Christian idea of God. If you are a Muslim, you will have some problems in accepting the Christian configuration of God. Don't you? So you are segmenting, you are narrowing down the reference, the teleontology of God. But here, the teleology of God is free. It does not, very wisely, does not brocade around God the systems, the systemic breaches of a particular religion. So nobody has, even an atheist will have no problem in going along with kids. Because in fact, who doesn't love to be happy? Who doesn't love joy? And etc. So poetry is the universal root, says Keats.
Thank you, sir, for clarifying that doubt. Anamika Chaudhary has asked to throw light on the concept of dream or the highest state of dream that Keats employs through this poem. Sir
The
already
highest,
have talked about, I think,
yeah.
the reference to
Yeah.
Visio.
The highest state of dream is oraculum or visio. Visio, তার সঙ্গে এন যোগ করলে vision. Visio is not something which an individual himself creates. An individual tries and tries, makes his or her search more deep, more mentally poised and pointed, and more acutely exercising his imaginativity spiritually, because negative capability is a spiritually positive trait. সকলের ভালোবাসায় তুমি জারিত হয়ে যখন নিজের আত্মাকে, নিজের স্বার্থকে বিসর্জন দিয়ে সবার হয়ে গেলে, isn't it a spiritual act? So you become a spirit, and when you are trying, at the beginning it is an imaginative twisting. তুমি চেষ্টা করছো, you are trying. So you are getting up, thinking, reverie. From reverie, it is contemplatio. From contemplatio, you become meditative. Contemplate, তুমি চিন্তা করছো অনেক গভীরে. Meditate, you are absolutely gone into an obscure hinterland between our world and that world. That is meditatio, isn't it? Then comes the highest thing, revelation. There is a flash. Heaven or the transcendental world touches you. You no longer work it out. You are permitted, you are given a kind of a revelation. This is on the analogy of religious system. In the monistic Plotinus theory and in Christian theory also, in any religious theory, There is at the supreme level a God connection. God comes down. Isn't it? In our Hindu philosophy, we think of the third eye when the connection is made here. Apparently, don't have. I know the connection. That's it. And what is it? No, Bhuvan Monde Pranavayu Samavesha. Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Riddesha Arjuno Tishtati Brahman Sarvutani Yantra Rudani Maya, etc. When you are absolutely, your third eye is open. What do you become? You become connected to God. That is what Wordsworth was remembering, the Hindu idea. He wrote in a letter to Professor Percival, then principal of Hindu College, later Presidency College, 1829. Percival wrote back to Wordsworth, "Oh, Mr. Wordsworth, our Hindu students are absolutely going gaga when they read your two poems, Immortality Ode and Tinton Abbey." And Wordsworth says, "I know, I wrote these poems mainly for them, with them in mind." What is that? Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us cometh from afar, and hath had elsewhere its setting, not in utter nakedness, nor in entire forgetfulness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our hope. Urdhamula madha shakam gunapraviddham vishaya pravalam. That is when God, Paramatma, by making the tree inverted, অশ্বত্থ গাছ নিচের দিকে তাকিয়ে আছে, the root is in heaven and the crown part becomes Jivatma, and we all are born here. That is what Wordsworth is absolutely reconciling Christian idea of God sending souls here and the Hindu idea of God sending souls here. So that is metaphysical. Keats is also becoming metaphysical monistically. Keats actually is, connecting very much like two poles of a turbine. When you go on pedaling up, cycling, the two poles, the north pole, south poles, when they are taken close together and you go on rolling in the physics class, then there is a spark. The electricity jumps from one pole to another pole. That is visio. Keats has come close to the ceiling. I have come, I have come, I have come. Let me see, let me see, let me see. Is there anything? And Kant says you can't touch. Keats says vision comes, revelation comes. It has touched me, although it will not remain forever with me. That is Agna Chakra. Hindu theory says in Agna Chakra you have a momentary connection with God. And in the Sahasra, you become God. You merge with God. You see, even in Christianity, there is a school of thought where there is a, usually Christianity doesn't believe in merging with God except in the doomsday. Then the whole world is destroyed, everything goes back into God. That is a teleological journey. অনেক দিন পরে হবে একদম প্রলয়। But in our Hindu system here in India, an individual can, not only through visio, there can be oraculum, the message of God, the touch of God can come here. And that is called epiphany. Epiphany. You know epiphany? So Keats says, Ode to a Nightingale is an epiphanic poem. যেখানে nightingale is actually dropping. Keats goes close to Nightingale. Nightingale is nothing but the supreme soul of the cosmos. God bolchen na, but very much like God. And Keats feels. And how does he feel in that stanza? I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, nor what soft incense hang upon the boughs, but in the embalmed darkness can guess each sweet wherewith the seasonable month endows the grass, the thicket. কি করছেন? নেমা ভান্তি চন্দ্র তারকা न तद्भासयते सूर्यो न शशांक न पावकः यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धामं परमं मम मम एवांशु जीवलोके जीवभूत सनातन. There neither the sun shines nor the moon shines. You only feel. সূর্যকোটি সমুজ্জ্বল চন্দ্রকোটি সুশীতল. That's how the godly state is described, that it cannot be described, it can only be felt. It feels, because the highest state cannot be relayed, cannot be verbalized. Your winged words can go there. Winged words are capable of more spiritual ramifications. I won't say them here. এক্ষুনি তোমরা ভাববে যে আমি বোধহয় ধর্মের কথা বলছি। No, I have found out the connection. Anyway, so the winged words, those, what is it? Those epia, theronthea are nothing but what? Yes, the Word. And in the beginning there was Word, and the Word was God. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And there is Anahaton Dhoni, there is Om sound, which is the nightingale sound coming to Keats, and Keats is cottoning up. Thank you. These are all correlation of mystical states. না আমরা পরীক্ষার জন্য কবিতাটা পড়ি, কিন্তু কবিতাটা actually is a correlation of Keats's mystical experience. বললে কিছু ভুল নয়. Keats was actually writing down what he felt, not just through fanciful exercise. Fashionably বেশ বসে বসে ভাবলাম নয়. He is actually monistical. He is giving us a recorded version of his dhyan, contemplatio, becoming visio.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Another question, I think it is related to that. Oshim Vishwal has asked that is the poem an escape, is an experimental escape from death? I think you have
Yes,
answered
yes,
that
yes,
one.
yes. It is. It is a mock-up. It is not actually an escape from death. It is a slamming in the face of. Just a second. আমার একটা খুব জরুরি ফোন এসেছে।
Yes, sir.
Very sorry, I am back. Actually, I've got to deliver speeches at many places. I had asked for a few hard printouts from my cyber man, so he was phoning me, so I had to take it. Otherwise, he's close his shop and go away. হ্যাঁ কি বলছিলাম দৈপায়ন?
হ্যাঁ স্যার, কোয়েশ্চেনটা ছিল হচ্ছে যে Keats's Ode to a Nightingale, is it an experimental escape from death?
No, it is actually a recorded version of how it felt like, how he felt disappointed, how he was terribly trying to get away to a world of foreverness, and how it is impossible to try to dodge past death, to hedge around death. The poem is actually, as my teacher told us, Babudesh Babu, all the odes are spontaneously written, but they are not recordations of his now feelings. Exactly at that moment, what he was feeling, he was correlating. No, he has already fought those psychomachias, those spiritual wars, those purgatorial fights, and he has risen beyond them. He has known the truths. He wants to share them now with us out of his pity and love for us. In this Nightingale poem, he shows us how, in trying to go away to the world of bliss, in our terrible fear of death, terrible hatred for suffering, how we huff and puff to get away to a world of dreams. Keats has substantiated our desire, but Keats has not substantiated the object of our desire. It is true that we all dream of being happy. We all want to go to a Shonar Jagat, a golden world. But is it true for that reason? That there is such a real golden world where we can go away to forever? No. You have to know how to settle down in this world. You have to be a poet hero. You have to have fortitude. You know that death will be there. but you shall not lose your yearning for great things. You shall not lose your sight of great ideals. Man should not be an ape. Man should be a noble soul, a philosopherly man, as Hamlet said. And this program, Inferno, Purgatory, and Paradiso, this meeting, suffering, lesson, talk with the ideal world, and coming back. It is a program, completely programmed to teach us a complete lesson. We come back a gentler, chastened, and much more responsible man. We know that it is absolutely important to keep our eye cast on, settled not on dung, not on mud, but on Nightingale's music, to mind how it sings for everybody. So you have to always think of, pursue great ideals. That is what the poem teaches us. The poem does not end in a negative exercise. The poem is not pessimistical, as people say, oh, it is pessimism, sir. No, it is a daring act of affirmation. Ache dukho, ache mrityu. But man, be brave, be brave. Don't give in to cowardice. Don't give in to smallness. Don't give in to selfishness. Be selfless. Assert your humanity.
Thank you, sir. It was a
Right.
wonderful session, and I must say that sir taught us this poem at our PG level, and sir again has given me a glimpse of those former university days. But I must say that sir hardly repeats himself. The way he has delivered this lecture is completely different from the way we have heard from him or understood from him at the UG days or the PG days. So this is something that I must say is really commendable, I would say. And we are living at a time when English discipline or English studies is getting closely assimilated to the social sciences, and almost the sense of literariness is ebbing away. For example, what the Russian formalists have said, that the English language or language actually has a special quality, special poetical cadence. But nowadays we are getting away from that, and Sir has given us through this lecture a kind of ray of that imaginative resplendence of that world of imagination which we must pursue. This is the best thing that we must go out for whenever we are reading literature. And I must say that this is the best lecture that one can have on John Keats. In India, I think at present
Oh, no,
moment he
no,
is
no,
the
no.
best expert on John Keats. This is
I
my
don't dare say
personal
so.
observation. And thank you,
Thank you
sir,
very much.
for
Right.
being here. And at the end, I must ask our respected YC sir, Professor Vishweshwar Chakraborty, to deliver a valedictory or farewell address. Sir, are you there? Yes, sir. Sir, over to you.
He has muted himself. He has kept himself muted.
স্যার আপনার মিউট করা রয়েছে, শোনা যাচ্ছে না।
হয়ে গেছে।
হ্যাঁ, এখন শোনা যাচ্ছে?
Right, Shita,
হ্যাঁ স্যার,
thank
হ্যাঁ
you.
স্যার।
এখন শোনা যাচ্ছে? Actually, uh, I have not been able to take my microphone, I mean that headphone with me when I came from home to the college. So, though I should have been there in the beginning, I was stuck on my way due to rain when I was coming to. That's why I could not attend. I'm extremely sorry, sir, for not
Never
being
mind,
able
you
to
are welcome.
make it. Thank you, sir. So I wish you a very good morning, everybody there. And I take the opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to Professor and eminent Professor Chidananda Bhattacharya, Professor of English, Rabindra Bharati University, for kindly gracing us, though virtually, with his illuminating talk on Keats's Nightingale Ode, which is very popular among not only in school texts, but also in college texts, perhaps in all the universities. So I feel it my proud privilege to welcome you, though this is not the not the right time, but still I would like to welcome you. And I will be very happy if I can welcome you in the college physically after the post-pandemic era. And then I thank him also on behalf of the college. I also thank the Department of English for organizing and conducting these lecture series with a view to broaden the scope of the understanding of the students uh, of different texts of English literature that are there in the syllabus. Particularly the talk that has been delivered by Professor Bhattacharya and the questions that have been raised by many participants here. Actually, it will help the students who are reading in their undergraduate level to delve deep into the text properly and to see the text in a very different manner, and it will open up new avenues for them, new critical insights for them. So I thank you again, sir, and I offer my sincere
Thank you.
gratitude. I also thank